it's hard to tell if
Do you know how much of like a brokerage can make on from customers on fees for shorting? Like, is it a lot of money?
it's the
Is it
same as
like a big percentage of their business?
not really. It's the same as long, and most customers aren't doing it anyway. So like
Mhm.
you know, but you got it. When did you get into Robinhood? Teens, 20s?
I think my average is 23, but I got in at like 13, and then I continued to average in all the way up to 30, and then bought some like when it went back down to like 40 the other week or whatever it was.
Crazy. Yeah, it's
Am I on mute
surprise.
right now? Are we on stream?
Yes. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's totally fine. I just didn't know if the volume was on or not
It was off.
because
It was yeah, it was off
some
briefly.
people in some people in chat said it's muted.
I like my mic has this like sensitive mute button where if I just like even move my hand near it, it goes on mute. So I'd rather
Oh,
have
got it. Okay.
like a switch or
Yeah, I
something.
don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind being on. So what's so D Wave is QBTS. I know you've been short quantum stuff for a long time now.
Yeah. So
Uh, what do you think about these? I mean, obviously, quantum computing is not going to be here for like 15 years, so this is all just kind of just smoke, right?
I think so. I mean, so the weird thing about D-Wave is that they're not even really a quantum computer company, and so like these guys have been around a while. And in fact, if you go back to the archives of like the different um, archives on the internet, like Wayback Machine, you'll see that the company was literally 20 years old, and in fact, like they sort of created the quantum computing industry in a way. But what they sort of try to hide, I think, in a lot of ways, is that they do something called quantum annealing, which is like a very, very specific algorithm. And so, just to get the numbers out of the way, it's roughly a 3 billion market cap and around 300 in cash. So, basically, 2.7 enterprise value, and this will be their best year ever on revenues, and they'll probably do something like 20 in revenue. So more than 100 times sales, close to like 150 times sales. But the thing about, and we'll talk about the technology in a second, but the thing about this year's sales is they sold a computer for 15 million.
One singular computer.
One singular computer to one buyer, and they've never really done this before. So this is the first time they've ever done
Uh,
this. And that company that bought the computer was actually a cloud customer of theirs before. So their cloud revenue, I think, is going to go basically completely away. And I think this was basically their only customer, but I don't know for sure. Um, at least like sizable customer. And so they bought the computer. Nobody's really sure why, but they were like this advanced computing facility. I think they're one of these places that's like, we want one of everything. And they decided to buy it, and God bless them, they've got it. But this was like a very weird one off. This was not
yeah,
like,
and
something they expect to happen again.
is the computer any good? Like, is it an efficient computer? Like, do we know any details about this
Yeah,
computer, or could it just
sure.
be like any computer? And you're just like, here's a bill for 15 mil.
Yeah. So great question. So the technology itself is a little bit interesting. They do, like I said, something called annealing, which is in essence a
Annealing. How do you
annealing,
spell that?
ANNEAL. So
Annealing. Okay.
yeah, to anneal is like to
To
like
heat.
yeah, exactly. Um, and
Okay. So quantum annealing, basically.
yep. And so like they try to basically reach these like minima or maxima or other types of like optimization problems of like fine tuning kind of like some variables in a chain, and that's usually called QUBO, QUBO, um, which is the quantum optimization kind of like algorithm.
Yeah, I see
Um,
that. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's like a quadratic unconstrained binary optimization, and QUBO is very doable on a regular computer. You don't need a quantum computer, and the they yeah, it's not so like in gate based quantum computing, which is what most people would refer to as real quantum computing. You are are creating a new form of computing. It's really a serious like endeavor theoretically, because you could change the complexity class of a problem. So, we have these P versus NP, NP hard problems and problems that live in P space. And in quantum, you can get a new complexity class. So NP problems or NP hard problems can't be solved because no matter how much computing time you throw at them, they're just too impossible to solve size-wise. You need too much compute, you need too much time. It's just never going to happen, like cracking Bitcoin or something. But if you can shift that problem to something like the P space, like BQP, and this gets very mathematical, but you can sort of fundamentally alter the hardness of the problem. That's kind of like what you want out of a quantum computer, because in traditional computing, without the features of quantum, like entanglement and superposition and all this other stuff, you are stuck with the on-off transistors, and the best you could do is NVIDIA, and there are limitations. Even an NVIDIA chip can't, even a million NVIDIA chips, or 100 million NVIDIA chips, or even 10 trillion NVIDIA chips could actually crack Bitcoin, because it is such a weird search space problem that it isn't enough compute. But if you can take that problem and change its complexity class, you immediately can solve it. And that's what real quantum computing like Google and IBM and kind of the other smaller companies too are trying to do. But D-Wave is in like this weird alternate universe where they're doing annealing, and they're getting a lot of the excitement of quantum, but they're not actually, a beneficiary of it. So they've been selling annealers for like a decade, and they've never had an annealer that, one, people have thought was better than just using a laptop or a GPU, not even a supercomputer, just like a regular computer. And they've never had a machine that outperformed, and they've never sold a lot of machines. So this company struggled for a long time. It was really hot early in the 2000s when I was starting in hedge fund world, and they were making a lot of waves because Google was interested in them and so forth, but they never panned out. They only sold a couple $1 million a year of these annealers. Basically, these big companies would get curious about it, and
they would buy one off or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like what's happening now.
Right. If you're
Can I summarize what you just said in like what I think is simple terms?
Yeah.
And you tell me if I'm right. Basically, you're saying quantum computing, the current problems that quantum computing is trying to solve is rather impossible. Is that what you're trying to say? And instead, quantum computing should be trying to change the problem mathematically and complexity-wise so that it can be solved. Otherwise, you can just use a computer right now. Is that kind of what I'm?
I would adjust it. I would adjust that a little bit. So what I would say is that there are very few, but there are some problems in computer science that only a quantum computer could solve. That's probably the better way to put it. And the list of those problems is interesting. We could talk about them, but D-Wave does not solve any of those problems.
Right. It's trying to just use Cubo to solve things, and Cubo is something that already exists on a laptop, for example.
Yes, and theoretically, you could improve on it. So this is like the traveling salesman problem of like, can you, if you have to make 75 stops as a UPS driver, what is actually the shortest route? That's a very hard math problem to calculate. But what's interesting is that we've gotten some really great approximations. And so you can, if SF at all, if you wanted to, drop off 75 packages around SF, you wouldn't go all the way uptown, the financial district or the Embarcadero, and then go all the way downtown, and then, go back and forth. You try to sort of organize your trip in a rational way. And so the traveling salesman problem is, it's not solved in a way that it's proven that this is the exact right way to do these 75 trips. But the actual optimization and the approximation aren't that different. And so like most of the people that worry about quantum computing and exact optimizations, they're mostly scientists that, don't actually, have practical, really practical things. So
there's no practical use for these computers that they're even selling.
At least not for Cubo, which is basically all that the D-Wave computer does. So there's no real great problem. Like it can't touch a encryption problem like Bitcoin. It can't touch a search problem or some other like you sort of have to wrangle the problem to solve to just be solved on the D-Wave computer, and it's very hard to like use out of the box or anything. They want to sell you the services of their analysts and programmers as well, and it hasn't really worked very well. Like Carousel Capital, which is a hedge fund I trust, they put out a short report. These guys are straight shooters. Um, they put out a report that showed that D-Wave's own customers have said that they don't use the machine. It's not useful. It was a fun experiment, but they're not using it. And this is
Oh yeah.
it's exciting because it's got quantum involved. It's certainly quantum adjacent, but the CEO is a very bombastic guy. He lives in Miami Beach, which if that means anything to you, which is away from the actual company. At least just
Not a good. It's
from
not
what
a good proxy.
and exactly, and he he's excited about quantum blockchain, which is kind of like this inane idea. So he's sort of like doing a little bit of a pivot and a little bit of a showman. Like he got very angry at Jensen, whereas all the other kind of quantum computing execs are like pretty respectful.
That kind of reminds me of that Nikola guy,
Right.
Milton.
Right. He's a little like Milton, and he also took out like these huge full page ads in the Wall Street Journal of like, you heard Jensen say quantum is 30 years away, but quantum is now. Call D-Wave, and we'll sell you quantum. And again, like people who really know the space, if you go on Archive, which is ARXIV, it's this sort of this academic journal hub that's become very, very popular, at least for computer science and math. Archive is like a self-publication server. If you type in D-Wave or annealers in there, you'll see tons of studies that show over and over again that it's not faster than a regular old computer. Not a supercomputer, but a regular old computer. And to me, it's just this like really crazy contraption, kind of like a Rube Goldberg contraption, which is this, or like the game.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, like the game Mousetrap, the board game. It's this elaborate thing that does a simple thing, and it's the company's sort of doing all the normal things. They're raising tons of capital, on their elevated stock price. They were almost out of business, a year ago. So it's just like a humorous company, but the quantum bubble is so hot that, it's hard to fight it. And, it has like a similar R squared to Robinhood. It has a similar correlation coefficient to HIMS and Palantir, and like real companies that are doing great and making money. And the best part about this,
they've sold one computer, right? So it's like,
well, so the one,
and also all these quantum stocks just exploded, after that Google announcement back in November. So it's like all of them are like 10x from where they should be, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there is something to quantum, at least on the real quantum side, but there's nothing to D-Wave. And the best part about this is that they announced this computer sale a long time ago. So it was in their guidance. It was well known. Nobody, was unexpecting it. But when they announced it, they said our revenue went up 600%, which is technically true. They had 15 million in revenue, and last year they had like 2 million in revenue because they've had 2 million a quarter in revenue for a long time. And they finally had, a great quarter. But they also announced that their bookings, which tracks to their future revenue really well, their bookings were just a few 100,000. So they're out of like pipeline, supply, sales pipeline for Q2. So they're kind of like their customer list. They've gotten everything they can get out of it. And, we'll see how they do in Q2, which is half over. But I don't think they're going to have very good Q2. And they didn't have a very good quarter before this one. So like this quarter is just, this nice mirage, but they'll be back to doing 2 million a quarter next quarter. And if anything, the quantum excitement from the other companies kind of hurts them because people will like get a quantum consultant or something and be like, oh, we're thinking about doing, an experiment, we're Boeing or we're MasterCard or whatever. And their quantum consultant's gonna be like, no, you want to use IBM quantum, or you want to use IonQ. You don't want to do this D-Wave thing. That's not a real thing. And like, so I don't think that this is going to really be some big help. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. It just went up a lot because, people saw this 500% thing and they said, "Wow, 500% revenue growth. That sounds great." And it
Yeah,
is.
no one does any research. No one does any research. They just see a headline. They're like, all right, I'm buying.
It would be great if it happened next quarter, but it unfortunately is not going to happen next quarter. And he was fairly explicit about that on the call. He said, we don't expect to do this. We've only done this once, and we don't expect to do it again anytime soon. We hope we can, but it's just not likely going to happen.
Yeah, it sounds like you're pretty sure about this one. It sounds like you are very bearish on them.
Yeah, it's just
what's the difference to you in terms of buying a put versus just shorting straight up?
I like just shorting because you kind of know where you stand and you don't have any of the problems with puts. Now, if you can get a good contract that like defines your risk,
Yeah.
so that like there's no way that it could, if it goes to 100, the most you can lose is just whatever you paid for in the put. There's some peace of mind to that. But personally, I just like to short, something like, I mean, I don't know you that well, but I think I know you a little bit. Like 2 or 3% of your portfolio, is a reasonable size, because like, what's going to happen? Is it going to go up 10x? Like, if it went up 10x, it wouldn't make a lot of sense, and it would probably come right back down. But you don't want to also risk your account.
Yeah,
and
you don't want to risk the farm on it.
Yeah,
and
when
then, do you have a stop loss ever for short? Like, is it?
I try not to, because you might get that one day craziness, and you have to make the
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you just have to make the call that like, okay, this is crazy, I don't like it, but it's going to come back down. And for a lot of us in my community, we were shorting the stock at like 9, 8, 9, and it just went crazy, went to 11. And the only news that they had was that the bookings, that was the surprise to us, is the bookings was way worse than we thought. They basically said that we don't have any business in the pipeline. Everything was in that one computer we sold to Germany. And we all knew about that for months. And the stock went up when they announced that they were going to sell the computer. So it's like the market knew. But, I think that if you can buy the right put, that's like, I think if you do buy puts, in the money puts are kind of the way to go, because D-Wave has gone up and down so much that the volatility prices are very high. So you have to like basically get a put that is very in the money. And so like a 20 put or a 15 put is kind of better than like an 8 put or a 7 put.
Yeah. I can just risk 2% here. I think that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I hope.
I don't think too hard about these things.
I just have to cross my fingers, because as a friend, I want to make sure that you make money. So.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, but if
I mean, you already made me a lot of money on the Robinhood and the PayPal. So
Robinhood is yours, but I hear you. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
You made me money on that. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'd been sleeping on it, and then I talked to Vlad briefly about Godel, and
Yeah, what did he say?
He liked it a lot. He thought it was a good platform, and he's got something he's trying to make that's somewhat similar called Legend, but it's probably closer to the broker platforms than anything else.
Just tell him to buy Godel for like $1 billion.
Yeah, that's the plan. I don't think it's that easy, but I'll try to.
Just you take him per se. Just lube him up a little bit.
That's the game plan. It always helps to have growing sales numbers and stuff like that. But yeah, I think we're going to probably serve different kinds of customers. We're much more focused on institutions, I think, and he's much more focused on every American, and I think that's great.
But the whole Bloomberg terminal has been around for like 50 years or whatever it has been, and is so expensive, and no one can afford it. So unless you're like one of these big financial institutions.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see who has the better strategy, but I mean, he's obviously done so amazing. I mean, there's not too many 30-something-year-old entrepreneurs who have done what he's done. It's basically, you can count them on a single hand.
Yeah, for sure. I got to tell you about my website. I'm starting a NerdWallet competitor.
Oh my god! Great.
Just like revolutionizing like the Points Guy or NerdWallet, and just funnel all my like social media traffic over there, and just try to make a better, transparent kind of like recommendation guide websites. So I think that should have some good, hopefully one day, enterprise value, but we'll see.
Yeah, let's call separately on that. I have some questions.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Awesome talking to you, man.
Wait, you said my number is like Sam Bankman-Fried?
I started typing your number in, and SBF came on my on my phone.
That's not good.
You gotta change it.
The 678, you mean?
I'm just kidding. It did happen. It's not a made up story, but I don't think I have anything to worry about.
No, I mean, him and I are from like the same area, so like he actually went to this high school that's not rivals with mine, but like
that's funny.
Close by, and so I'm not surprised, but that's scary.
Yeah, well, I think you'll be all right. You so far so good.
I appreciate it, Martin.
Good talking to you.
Thanks. I'll let you know how this D-Wave short goes.
All right. Thanks, Humphrey. See you.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, Humphrey Yang, everyone. Make sure you check out his channel on personal finance. One of the best personal finance YouTubes. All right. So yes, we are down 19% on our big short on D-Wave, but we're very excited. So stay tuned. D-Wave will implode, I believe, to low single digits later this year. So very excited.